Tom Gray here. Here I am back with the Grandpa of Mini Lathes in the next installment in this series. I'm going to show how I did a few beef ups to the carriage, the cross slide, the compound, and the tool post, just to make things a little bit more rigid, a little less prone to chatter, make things a little bit stronger. For not a whole lot of money. So let me take you through what I did. Installed on the machine from the back, from this view you can see a few of the changes. Right here is this retainer plate that catches the ways on the back of the lathe. The gib screws for the cross slide, the gib screws for the compound, the tool post screw, and the tool holder and cutter. From this view, which is the front of the lathe, you can see the saddle retainer here. You can't see them, but the screws that hold the saddle retainer on. Again, you can see the gib screws, and then the bolts that hold the compound to the cross slide. So now I'm gonna disassemble all this, and I'll take you through the how I made the little parts one by one. So right up front, I got to thank Phillips Home Repair. He did a video on this a few years ago on how he beefed up his 109, and I borrowed some of his tricks and kind of redid them in my own way. But go check out his videos. He's got some good stuff. Okay, so let's start right at the very top. So the business end, let me start by saying, so chatter, which is what we're trying to fight here, is three things. It's stiffness or rigidity, which is another way of saying springiness. So how springy everything is. So the stiffer you can make everything, the better, the less chatter you get. Tool forces. And tool forces are complicated, but it comes down to how much you're pushing the tool in, how sharp your tools are, and how much you're forcing the tool into the material. And then the third thing is what I call lost motion. So when you got slop, things are loose. It's not that they're not stiff or rigid, it's just that they're not tight. So stuff starts to move around and shake and vibrate. And that motion that's not accounted for in all of your fasteners and all of your joints turns into vibration, turns into chatter. Quinn over on Blondie Hacks did a really good analysis of chatter. She used a stick of butter to show how it works. It's a pretty good video. Go check her out at Blondie Hacks. She's got a lot of good stuff. Okay, so let's start our upgrades at the very top. So here's the tools I was using. It's a 1/4 inch brazed carbide, cheap Amazon.com, millions of them purchase. So I upgraded to a 3/8 carbide tool holder. So right away, obviously 3/8, probably see it in this view here. You're talking about a lot beefier of a tool. So a lot more stiffness. So the other thing is that this little 1/4 inch tool can only engage 3 of these set screws, whereas this sucker here can engage all 4 of them. Obviously I don't have them in there right now, but now I can get all 4 of the set screws on the quick change holder doing their job. So easy change, $40, Amazon.com. There's lots and lots and lots of options. The next stop on our voyage to rigidity is the tool post retention bolt. So in the original video where I outfitted this tool post to this cross slide, I did this little homemade nut because the T-slot on the 109 is kind of a weird size. It's not a standard T-nut. So I made this up and it didn't work. It bent. So this is actually how I just got going on this voyage. As you can see, it's bent right there. I kept tightening and tightening the bolt, and it just kept turning and turning. I was like, uh-oh, something's giving way. And sure enough, it was bending my, what I thought, clever homemade nut, which didn't work out so good. So what I did is I went to McMaster and I bought a 7/16 T-nut that was close in size. And then I just took the angle grinder and I went to town on the sides and the bottom, the edges, and slowly sneaked up on it, little at a time, grinding, fitting, grinding, fitting, grinding, fitting, reducing the height of the shoulders and the base. And I ended up with this. And now this fits very nicely into the T-slot. And it takes a 7/16 bolt, which is a size up from the 3/8 bolt I was using, which fits in the tool post very nicely. So now I've got a much tougher fastener holding down, fastener system, the bolt and the nut holding down the tool post. While we're in the neighborhood, I also replaced all of the Gibbs screws, the Gibbs set screws. So the original Gibbs set screws in all the locations on this thing are these little slotted head number 8 teeny weeny set screws. Since this lathe is very sensitive to how the Gibbs are tightened, I didn't want to be reaching for a little screwdriver and monkeying around with that, so I replaced them with cap screws, with socket head cap screws, and I just pointed the ends of them, and then those install in all the locations for the Gibb retaining screws on the cross slide and on the compound. And there's 5 of them. 3 on here, 2 on the compound. Next stop down the chain are the compound retaining bolts. So here's the original Craftsman compound retaining bolts. It's a 5/16 with this kind of thin T head on it. That's a separate piece. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a separate little piece. What I did is I went and I got a 3/8 T-slot nut, again from McMaster, one piece, 3/8, grade 8, and I took the angle grinder and a Dremel tool and a file to it, and I shaved it down and shaved it down and shaped it down and shaped it down, little at a time, until I got to this half moon shape that easily fits up into the compound, the cross slide, and drilled out the holes in the compound to accommodate a 3/8 bolt, and then that comes together like so, and used a SAE hardened washer and a grade 8 nut. Next step down the chain is the retainer for the rear ways. So the original piece is this cast iron 1-hole, let's say 3/8, 5/16 thick piece of cast iron. So what I did is I made this piece out of a piece of 4140, and what I used for it was the angle grinder, a file, a drill, Lots and lots of filing, some grinding, sanding, more filing, a little bit of drilling, some chamfering, lots of handwork, and I ended up with this. On top of that, the original piece only has one retaining hole for a 1/4 inch fastener. So I added 2 more holes, 1024, and I did that by assembling the retainer, bolting it in place with a 1/4 inch bolt, and then drilling through it and into the cross slide itself, and then threading in 2 1024 cap screws. So at the end of the story, what you end up with is a 1/4 inch cap screw and 2 number 10 cap screws to hold everything in place. So you went from 1 fastener on kind of a flimsy cast iron piece to 3 fasteners on a nice heavy steel 3/8 thick piece of 4140. Next is the retainers for the front sideways. The original pieces are these 2 little 332s thick 2 fastener pieces that are held on with 2 number 8 screws. So I took those off and I fashioned a single piece, again out of a piece of 4140, that fits in place of those 2. It's one piece so they can support each other. And I simply scalloped out a portion for the half nut. I ground it, sanded it, ground it some more, drilled the holes in it, threaded them with 1024 screws, did some finish sanding, a little bit more fitting, and got to this point where now we can lay this in place. It doesn't interfere with the half nut. It's an 1/8 inch thick, where these were 332s. So you can see quite a bit of difference there. Nice and strong. To retain these little guys, the original screw was this number 8 32 slotted head, Philister head screw, 4 of them. So what I did there is I replaced them with 1024 socket head cap screws, and they go down into these countersunk holes so you kind of can't see them, but they go in there. And let's reassemble. So I removed the tailstock to make a little room, and we start by finagling the saddle over the lead screw, and then I'm going to install the rear retainer. I'm using button heads for a button head for the 1/4 inch and socket heads for the 1024s, so they have the same hex size, so I only need to grab 1 wrench when I'm installing and messing around. And I'm just landing hardened AN washers on there. With everything still loose out back here, I'm going to install the front retainer just by sliding it under with the scallop towards the half nut. And I did have to modify these bolts and holes a little bit. There's 2 long and 2 short screws. For the longies, I couldn't counterbore these holes, so I ground the heads of the bolts down a little bit. And on the outer holes for the shorties, I just counterbored them just a little bit bigger than the head of a 1024 socket head screw. So I'll just drop the screw in there and then fish around until I get it started from below. Like that. Okay, in with the new compound retention studs made out of our T-bolts. On with the compound and our newly drilled out holes. A couple hardened AN washers and a couple grade 8 hardened nuts. Next is the tool post. So I'm going to lay just a piece of paper underneath our new T-nut, our newly ground T-nut, to make sure that we do not bind it up. Then the tool post, and then the 7/16 bolt with an hardened AN washer under it, just to make darn good and sure we don't bottom out on the compound. A little bit of torque. Okay, here's the setup. This is a piece I was turning before. I'll spooge it up with a little anchor lube and see how she cuts. Wow. You can still see some of the marks from the previous chattered up cut, but the part I just cut is really smooth, and I didn't hear hardly any chatter at all, if any. So, wow, what a difference. Wow. There's a bird down in there. Wow, what a difference. You can see some striations on it, but it's smooth. I mean, it's really smooth. Okay, chattered up surface number 2. Wow, it's a lot better. I'll probably take a little bit more. I don't think I got all the way through the old chatter, but I'll take another rip at it. Better yet. Wow, that's a bunch smoother. I could probably get a little bit more aggressive, but I want to take it easy on this whole thing. I don't want to start breaking parts. Wow, what a difference. Okay, well, everything they say is true. Make it more rigid, take out the springiness, take out the lost motion, and watch the tool forces. Well, I'm going to call this one a success, and it is on to the next project. I will see you there and then.